Hi, my name is Joe Jackson. Between the years 1990 and 2000, I did hundreds of interviews with musicians for the Irish Times in a slot that was originally called the Joe Jackson Interview. When Paddy Woodworth, the newspaper's arts editor, launched its now legendary sound and vision double-page spread. The name above the title idea was his. And I once said to Paddy, "Why me, Lord?" I was joking, though editors do like to be addressed that way. Paddy explained that he chose me primarily because we both believe that the arts should be central to political debate rather than relegated to the sidelines, and that as such, popular music, as an outgrowth of popular culture, could and should be explored from a socio-political perspective. And we agreed that space should not be given to musicians whose primary aim was to sell, say, a gig or a CD, though that is too often the norm in newspapers and magazines. They had to have a good and maybe even illuminating story to tell. Either way, that slot, which if only because it was a three-quarter page spread in the Irish Times, became much sought after, and it could help sell out a gig, or so Tony Bennett once told me. And that to me was the added bonus, especially as someone who became an interviewer to meet my music heroes. I now had access to virtually any musician I wanted to interview, including longtime heroes such as Bennett, Ray Charles, and Joni Mitchell. And even if all I got was a phone interview, something I usually rejected because it didn't lend itself to in-depth discussion, I was happy to say, "You bet." What follows is one of my Irish Times interviews. Enjoy. Can I speak to Lloyd or Tom, please?
Yeah, this is Tom.
Hello, Tom.
How's it going?
Joe Jackson here.
Hi.
Yeah, we met before. Do you remember? I interviewed you for an Irish rock mag twice.
Right. I remember it well.
Okay, I asked you some tough interrogative questions.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's the same no bullshit questions here. I tell you, I've now taken over a weekly slot in the Irish Times, okay?
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of 3/4 of a page to the biggest readership in the country. But it is a kind of, we've got a new audience, so some of the questions I'm going to have to either repeat or maybe take some of the quotes from before.
Okay.
So anyway, so you're not going to remember the things I asked you then.
Right.
Okay, you're coming straight in to follow James Brown, who was here last Saturday.
Oh, yeah?
And he disappointed a lot of audiences because his kind of rock cabaret show almost had more to do with a band than it had to do with a singer.
Right.
I mean, your show won't be fashioned that way, and has it changed since we last saw you?
Well, it's changed in, I'm going to use a British band.
Right.
The band that I used on the TV
Sure.
shows. We realized that they're a very good band. They're excellent. That we work well together.
Right. Why though?
So,
Why? What's so good about them?
It clicked. We just clicked. It was one of those things that when I was suggesting things, they were getting the idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't have to sort of go nuts trying to explain
Right.
what we needed. It clicked very easily.
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
so I first met them when I started doing some TV shows. I did. Let me see. The first time I worked with a bunch of them there was in Wembley when I did the Simple Truth concert.
Right.
It was, for the Kurds. It was
Yeah.
a
Right.
refugee thing.
Yeah.
So they were there then because they're basically the same band that Pink Floyd uses.
All right.
The drummer especially.
Jesus, you're really getting into rock now, eh?
Well, so
So we're not going to have 25-minute drum solos, are we?
no. So when I did this Simple Truth thing, I
Right.
thought how good the drummer was then.
Okay.
And then I did another one again then from Nottingham, which was last year, just before Christmas last year, was for what the hell was it for? It was
It was for Tom Jones.
it was a charity thing that we did. But anyway, it
Right.
was Amnesty International.
All right. Okay.
That's
Okay.
what it was for. And it was the same band again, basically, the drummer especially,
But it's a long way from although you always had your own kind of rhythm section, even in the Vegas shows, didn't you?
Yeah.
You kind of worked with a strong rock. It was always your own rock and roll bass, no matter what was added on top of that.
Exactly.
Right.
So I was, up to now, I've been using an American band,
Right.
young guys, the ones that I was in Ireland with last year.
Sure.
And they're good, but They're a West Coast band. If you
All right,
understand.
I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah. So I noticed a shift in emphasis between the two last shows. Like, I know, and also you were trying to, we joked about it the last time, shift the focus from down around the waist to up to the neck.
Right. Well, not entirely, but
Well, I tell you, somebody said to me at the time, that sounds great, but I mean, his voice is as sexy as anything that's happening down below his waist.
right.
So you can't really make the division, can you?
Well, no, but that's the thing was at the beginning. I thought it was all one. You know what I mean? It was the showmanship was just there to push the voice across.
Right.
You know, that was the original idea. But the bloody, as the years went on,
Showmanship took over.
yeah, the knicker throwing got to where like I was being reviewed and how many pairs of underwear was thrown up there.
Oh, well, I know, sure. I remember the last gig where you were talking about Van Morrison and the knickers flew at the very wrong moment, and I just felt this has fucked it up.
Yeah.
You know, so it was that thing. But you have been revamping the overall image between the TV show, between the look of the clothes you're wearing, the recordings you were doing with Van and that. I mean, there is a concerted effort to totally turn your previous image on its head, isn't there?
Well, as I'm saying, not completely. I wouldn't
All
say
right. Okay.
I wanted to sort of start from scratch and not have anything to do what I've done before.
Right. Okay.
It's
Okay.
not that. It's to emphasize. It's to push across that I want to be taken seriously as a singer.
Okay. Did you see the Commitments?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
All right. Well, that's the end of that question.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
I want to see it. I mean, I keep wanting to see it, but I just haven't had the opportunity to see it yet.
Well, that's very much about what kind of soul music meant to Northside Dublin working class kids.
Yes.
You know, and that's why James Brown came on, was very big here last Saturday. Even though it was people thought it was a bad show, he got a huge audience.
Right.
Because there's a rediscovery of that kind of music. And I've always, even before it became fashionable, placed you back there with that kind of rock and soul Solomon Burke route.
Right.
I mean, do you ever, you know the way you can see Solomon Burke and people like that, and they get attention for the singing at this point, rather than anything else. Like James Brown doesn't even have to do a sexy act. I mean, they're just seen as massive vocalists.
Right.
I mean, do you ever get angry at that? Really wish you could be that, accepted solely on that level?
Well, I can't really be, because I haven't only been that. I haven't.
Right.
Been, Solomon Burke is Solomon Burke and James Brown is James Brown. They've done that kind of music all the time.
Right. Right.
They're
Right.
looked upon like that. But with me, see, the problem that I've had is that I've done so many. I've done a mixture of material.
Right.
Always have done.
Sure. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
always hard to place me. That people.
Right. Right.
He's done a rock and roll singer. He's done a rhythm and blues singer. He's done a.
Country.
Yeah, and he's not a country singer.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm a pop singer.
Do you know the way when you listen to Solomon Burke talk about music, right? He particularly talks about, and I talked recently to Sam Phillips about the new Elvis box set, and he corrected me when he was just saying that too many people think of rock music as sex, that it's just the rhythms of rock or the rhythms of sex replicated on stage.
Right.
But people like Solomon Burke and that say it also has a lot to do with spirit.
Yes.
That apart from just aiming for the great orgasm, you're aiming for something more transcendent. I mean, do you is that part of it for you? I mean, you're not really religious in that way, are you?
No, not. Can I just put you on hold for 1 second?
Sure.
And I'll go in another room.
All right.
Okay. To another room, but now I can't with this phone, see.
All right.
I was going to put you on hold and then go into the other room.
So are they all sitting around you?
No, they're not now.
You dropped them out the window?
Yeah. They're on the boardwalk now.
Okay.
In Atlantic City. No, they got into the other room.
All right.
Yeah, we're in sort of an office area, with this
All right.
a breakfast room, office type deal,
Oh, sure, right. Okay.
And that was it. But I was going to switch then to the other phone. I was going to go in the sitting room.
All right. Okay.
But I couldn't do it, so I've sent them in there.
All right. Okay.
So we're okay.
Okay, so that question about people saying that, or some people might say that your show was rooted more in the sex than in the spirit, that you weren't aiming for anything more than kind of the sexual element.
The whole thing, no, not only for the sexual element. See, it all depends what kind of song that I'm singing.
Right.
If I'm singing a gospel song, for instance.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when I get into the song.
Right.
Or if I'm doing the green grass of home. I'm into that song. I'm into that feeling. So there's no. But then again, if I'm going to sing Great Balls of Fire or She's a Lady or
Right.
What's New Pussycat has got a sort of a sexual thing to it.
Right, but what about the spirituality in Tom Jones's life? I know we talked about this with Van Morrison. He very much seeks something like that. Do you? You don't, do you? I mean, you.
No, because I'm not searching for it. I feel I have it.
Right, right.
You know, I am a spiritual person, really.
Right.
You know, I mean, I am a Christian, and I'm not a churchgoer.
Right, right.
But I do believe in God, and I believe that you should, you should be honest with yourself, and you should try and live as best you can.
Right,
I mean,
right.
I have values.
Sure, sure.
You know,
So what are the? How much of them are? I heard the album A Thousand Voices,
yes.
which I was very happy to hear.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how did that feel to you? You know, to come. I heard the roar of applause when you walked out onto stage. I mean, your values are very much based in a Welsh background.
Yes.
Are they not?
Definitely.
Right,
I
right.
am Welsh, and I mean that's where I come from, and I'm very pleased to be Welsh, to have come from that kind of community.
Right.
Because I feel that's what's given me strength.
And isn't that community very like the Irish, like family based?
Yes, definitely.
Right.
It's very
right.
similar. When I'm in Ireland, it's the same kind of feeling. The only difference is the accent. That's about all.
Right. There's also the
sense of humour is very similar as well.
A bit off the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think also there's a kind of melancholic strain at the soul and heart of Celtic people, be they Wales, Irish, that we all seem to just have that little darkness deep down inside.
Well, I think so. There is definite. I mean, it's definitely not English.
Right.
I know that. When I first went from Cardiff to London.
Right.
You know, it was a big move for me.
Sure.
You know, as I've said before, when people have said, well, what do the lads think, you know, in Wales that you've gone to America? I said they thought I left when I went to London.
Sure.
Which I did.
Is there anything? Well, then, I mean, where are you now based? Still in LA?
Yeah, I still have I have a green card. I'm still an American resident, but I'm a British subject. I still have my British passport.
Is there ever a moment when, like we'd say, I talked to Richard Harris, who lives in the Bahamas, where he says, you know, the ache will rise very strongly in him to reroot himself back on the old soil?
Well, that's why I bought a house. I got a house now in South Wales.
Right.
You know, that I've had for 3 years, I think now.
Okay, so you spent some time there.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll be there now Monday. I leave here Sunday night from Atlantic City, and I'm going to go into Wales straight away.
Right.
Start a rehearsal on Wednesday in London, but at least I'll have like 2 days there.
Right. How did it feel singing stuff like Land of Our Fathers? I don't know, that's the English translation, I think.
Right.
I mean, does that stuff mean... Yeah?
Well, it was... I felt that I wasn't in complete control. You know, when I do my own show...
Right.
It's what I do. You know, you go and you do it.
Okay.
You have your own band, and you have your own lights, and you have your... You know, you're self-contained, and that's it.
Right.
So, but when I was there was a... It felt like there was a bigger power than me. You know what I mean? There was more going on than.
What does that mean? Your ego can't accommodate being part of a chorus again?
Well, no, it could. It's just that I didn't feel. I just felt part of something.
Oh, right.
You know, I wasn't in control. I wasn't the one. You know, there were 7,000 voices there.
Sure.
You know,
and they were all great.
Yeah.
Okay,
It can be very humbling, if you like.
Well, wasn't that good for you, Tom?
It was good for me. It really was good for me.
Right.
I was glad to be a part of it, and it really,
Sure.
I mean, but it was completely different. I felt like a little boy again. You know, I felt like,
Right.
Being in school and singing for the teacher.
Right.
You know what I mean? Singing for being back in the bloody music class again.
And you were waiting for him to hit you with a ruler.
Yeah, and I looked at it because I looked at I wasn't aware of it, but when I saw it on the telly afterwards, I was looking at the conductor very sheepishly.
All right.
In the corner of my eye, and I thought, Jesus Christ, I mean, it really looks like I'm, okay, sir, is that all right?
I'll bring you in an apple tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. So when he gave me the thumbs up at the end, I was very pleased, you know.
Very good. Now that sounds like a good experience.
It was great, really.
But we did talk very seriously at one point, maybe it was 3 years ago, about how you didn't want, as much as your love for Wales is true to your heart and soul, you didn't want to be described as a Welsh nationalist. You still feel that?
Nationalist.
Right.
Not a separatist, not a separatist. I think that's the word. I don't think that it can work.
Right.
To be independent. Funny enough, I just read a book about O England Doer.
How do I spell that? O-W-E-N?
Yeah, I'll get the spell. I got the book here if you want the spelling, because there's English spelling and the Welsh spelling.
All right, I'd rather have the Welsh.
All right, let me just get the book. Just
All
a
right,
second.
all right,
Okay.
all right,
The Welsh spelling is O-W-A-I-N.
right, right.
That's O.
All right.
Right? And Glyndŵr is Glndwr.
Okay, all right. And the book is?
It's called Owen Glyndŵr, and it
All right.
was written by Sir J.E. Lloyd.
That's capital J and capital E and L-Y-O-O-D?
Double L.
Double L-O-Y-D, all right. Okay, and it is?
Yeah, it's Owen Glyndŵr. It's about it was the last uprising in Wales
Right.
against the English when it was like 14.
Okay.
It lasted for about 8 years, I think.
Right, right,
1400
right.
to 1408, and that was the last time they tried for independence.
Okay, okay. So what did that reconvince you of your position that just can't operate separately?
Well, because the first thing is, geographically, Wales is like stuck right on the side of England.
Right,
You know what I mean? And the struggles that they had in those days, it goes into the Irish situation at that
Right.
time and the
Right.
Scottish situation. But they, because of the geographic location, it was easier for the Scots to hold the English off.
all right.
And the same thing for the Irish, you see, because of the Irish Sea, of course.
Right, 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 right,
So,
right.
but the Welsh, it was very difficult for them because the border is so long.
Right.
You know, from north to south, it's almost impossible to try and
All
hold
right.
it. But then again, the same thing was happening when Owen Glyndŵr was going into England and creating havoc there.
Right. So when you sit down and talk with Welsh friends, like at the time of doing that concert and that, do you get into fights with them over your different positions? Like, I mean, healthy arguments.
Oh yeah. But that's the trouble with the Welsh. Sometimes you see, you can't. Sometimes it's difficult to have a healthy argument without actually getting physical.
It's not. You can't do that.
What?
You can't do that.
No, I can't. That's what I'm saying. So sometimes I have to not anymore. You know, I got to be careful. But it's difficult sometimes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I tell you, people were very impressed when you and I first spoke about this in Hot Press because, you know, they had the image of you that, I think it goes back to those lies that Gordon, no, what was the guy, that Chris Hutchins maybe put out about you not able to read or talk and being dumb, basically. Remember all that stuff? And people were just delighted or astounded that you and I were talking about things like Welsh separatism or nationalism. So, I mean, I think in an Irish Times context, it's just as good for us to do that. Would you have got any flack? Because remember at one point you said in that interview that I am British and you believed in fighting for your country, which was a follow-on of your comment from the 60s. And you said if asked to, you would have gone to Northern Ireland to fight.
You know, that's a touchy situation there.
Right,
But I think it's not so much going to Northern Ireland to fight.
right,
It's keeping the peace.
right, sure, right.
You know, that would be
The objective.
yeah,
Right,
to try
right,
and straighten it out. I mean, not to. It's a delicate. I know what the situation. I mean, I don't know completely, or we'd be able to solve it. I'm sure that
sure,
most Irish people don't really know exactly how to do it. You know what I mean?
right,
Or it would be done. But it's. I mean, if I was called upon, if I was in the British Army and I was called to do it, I would have done it.
right. But you were saying that in microcosm, you and your wife are Protestant and Catholic, so you do have a kind of elemental understanding of the collisions that could be there that aren't there in your situation.
That's right.
You know?
And it's not there in Wales. You see, there was a Catholic church. I don't know whether I told you this before, but
No.
in the street that I grew up, well, not grew up in, but when I first got married, I was married at 16.
Yeah.
And then I went to live with my wife's parents in a street that there was a Catholic school, right?
Right.
In this one street that she used to go to, my wife. And then right next door to that is a Jewish synagogue,
Right.
right? And about 20 doors down, that's about all, was a Baptist chapel.
Right.
Right? And it's all in this one little street.
Okay.
And I never had any problems.
All right.
You know what I mean? Now, kids would fight sometimes from school to school. Like I went to a Protestant school and had to walk. I lived closer to the Catholic school than I did the Protestant school.
Right.
So every day I had to sort of pick, there was 3 ways to go.
Right.
So there were 3 streets to go. wrong one, but it was because, and then the Catholic kids were becoming, a lot of them would be living closer to the Protestant school.
Right,
So we
okay.
had to pass one another, but, you know, looking back on it, I realized that it was school to school. It wasn't anything really to do with these kids were Catholic and I was Protestant.
Right, and you don't feel any kind of, truthfully, any kind of prejudice against race, do you?
Not at all.
You know, because one hears of Elvis saying things against Catholic. I was just back from Memphis, and you know that privately he had private views against Jews, against Catholics, maybe.
That's right.
You don't harbour those prejudices, do you?
Definitely not. I mean, if with my wife being Catholic, there was no problem for me.
Right,
and thank
right.
God there wasn't a problem for her.
Sure.
You know, there wasn't. We didn't see it. There was no such thing. Now the church tried to make something out of it.
All right.
You know, that the Catholic priest came up and he said, look, you must marry, you know, you're living in sin.
All right.
You know, and I said, no, I don't think so.
You're living in sin after you married?
Well, I didn't marry in the Catholic Church.
Oh, right, I see, yeah.
So as far as he was concerned, we weren't married.
All right.
And that, I think, was putting her off. It was
Sure.
She was being forced into something, and I said, look, you know, if you really want me to, I will marry you again, you know, in a Catholic church, if that's what you want.
But they must have also given you flack tone because she was pregnant.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah? Like
It wasn't so much that, though.
Wasn't it?
No, it was because I was non-Catholic, or they wanted me to be a Catholic.
All right.
The Catholic Church.
All right.
The priest said, you must marry your wife in a Catholic church, you know, and you must come to the Catholic Church. And I said, but Father, I'm not Catholic.
Okay.
You know, and that's it. But I said, I wouldn't stop my wife from practicing Catholicism.
All right.
And I would marry her in the Catholic Church.
All right.
You know, there's no problem there. I'm not trying to, you know, to bring her, you know, to make her a Protestant.
Sure.
You know, I said she can, as long as she's able to do that.
And what is Mark raised as?
We didn't send him either. He's a Christian, and that's all.
All right.
He took religious instructions in school, but he didn't go to either church.
Okay. And
because of that.
Because of the tension between.
Yeah, I didn't want him in a situation where
he's torn.
Yes.
Right.
So he just took it in school, and that was it. And so there was no problem there.
Hi, Joe Jackson here again. And if you want to read the article that came out of that chat you just heard, check my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com. Also, if you'd like to be notified of shows that focus on hundreds more interviews like the one you just heard, why not subscribe to the Joe Jackson Interviews podcast? Either way, thank you for listening.